Is it really too much to ask for? A career, some money, a girl? This is weird.
Customer support. Hello, Eddie.
How did you know my name?
The rules are simple. If you want to redo something, re-edit it.
I think I may have re-edited our date. What do you remember about last night?
Nothing's perfect. Do something!
This is a real power.
Now I gotta decide, how do I change the world? Why me? What can I do?
I'm dying. And reality's glitching apart.
Hey guys.
You've got one final test, my friend.
Oh my God.
What are you gonna do now?
Those glitches, they were you.
It's not perfect. It doesn't pretend to be.
No. We're running out of time.
Welcome back to the Core Report. I'm your host, Simi Kaur, and today I have with me an amazing person that I want to speak to. And let's touch upon his recognition. 2-season Project Greenlight finalist, Student Academy Award finalist, USA Film's Top 10 Emerging Directors list, On the Law finalist. I have with me director and writer of the TV series Chaser, Daniel Roemer. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right.
Yes. I brought you on today because I had one of your actors on last week, Russ Russo. So I want to talk to you about the TV series Chaser, which is now on Tubi and Amazon Prime. I want to know how you came about the Chaser and tell us, the people that don't know what it's about, tell them what it's about and how you came up with an idea for it.
Yeah, so the gist of it is it's about a video editor that discovers the power to re-edit the last 24 hours. So he gets to, use his, kind of magical power to shape reality and shape life the way he wants. And that's just, and then you get, what happens? Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? It does a butterfly effect mess everything up?
Yes. So how did you come up with the concept of the Chaser? Because I know you are the writer of it and you also directed it. So how did you come up with the idea to be like, hey, like I want to write this series?
Yeah, it's always a hard question to answer how an idea happens, because I think it's like an amalgamation of things that you like and internalize over your whole life. And I think for me, I've always been interested in stories that manipulate time or, go backwards or, recently I saw on IMAX, Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, which deals with, coming into like a wormhole and event horizon and time slowing and it's, time is relative and that's something that we explore. So that I think that was the love that I had initially for the story.
And it's so funny that you touched up on the manipulation of time, because that was actually one of my questions for later on, but you already touched on it. So I'm going to jump right on that. So what is it about manipulation of time? Wow, words. That fascinates you? Like, what is it that just you're like, because it's a common theme in all your projects, right? And you're very fascinated with it. What is it that fascinates you about it?
I think as humans, we in general are locked into this idea that like things are linear and they have a beginning, a middle, and an end, or like, yeah, I don't know. But what I like about art is that it like shakes you out of the reality and it pops the bubble that you're in. And in reality, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, like, Einstein proved if you move at the speed of light versus if you're not, then you come back and, you know, all the people that you know are dead because they aged out and you're still like 5 years later, you know.
Right.
So that is reality, but we as humans, we don't really live in that reality in general. So when you can create something that say, but remember, this is actually an even more in-depth version of what's real, then people are like, oh yeah, like it's like a, you know, a fizzle to their brain. And I like that. I like shaking people up a little bit and reminding them that life is more than just what it seems, you know.
Yes. So I think that was the common theme in The Chaser as well. You know, Eddi Sebastian, who is played by Russ Russo, he's kind of, you know, a guy in the background, doesn't get the girls, doesn't, you know, isn't the popular guy, let's say, right? And a couple of times he has these embarrassing moments. And obviously when he gets a hold of that laptop, he's able to kind of like erase those things and make it better. I think in reality, we all wish we could do those moments. How important do you think that is, you know, for us as humans in general, not to go back and try to erase something?
Yeah, it's always tricky because you don't really know if things would turn out worse if you went back and changed something. Although I do believe that there are certain things in the world that are just so dark and so evil that they just should be changed.
Mm.
And that's kind of in its own category. But then there's the stuff that it's like exactly, I think, more about what Chasers is about, which is, you know, he's chasing after this girl and he's manipulating, he's trying to get in a relationship with her, and she's not even really the right person to be with anyway. So, you know, it's just kind of larger lesson. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe he never would have gotten to the path, his more enlightened path, if he didn't go through that whole crazy journey anyway.
How do you go about choosing which actor is correct for the role?
I think that's one of, or if not the most important job of the director is casting. You know, a lot of the other technical stuff, everything's important because it all comes together. But when you get the right cast, it's almost like the film makes itself, and you're more like a child in a candy store, and you're tweaking it and you're guiding it, but it has its own life. And so I put a ton of work into casting, and especially on this one, I kind of made a pact with myself that I wouldn't even go into production unless we found the right people for the parts. So we cast over a long period of time. Some of the actors we found like right away, and then some of them, like Russ, it took us almost a year to find.
Oh, wow.
And I was just getting real scared down at the end of the line because I was like, oh no, like what if, you know, are we gonna have to close this whole thing down? And lucky stars, he came about right at the end there. So yeah, lots of work. And I also have to do a shout out to, it wasn't just me, you know, there's a whole team of people working together and emailing, and we cast in LA, we did locally in Ohio, we did New Jersey, New York,
Wow.
everywhere. So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And to find, like, as you said, I didn't realize it took that long to find someone. You know, for people that are watching, you know, sometimes, you know, I myself, you know, we submit stuff, right? And we're like, we're not hearing back. Oh my God, did they like us?
Yeah.
Did they not like us? It takes a long time, right? Casting could come back to you right away, and or they might sit there for 6, 7, 8 months, and then they're all of a sudden you forget about something. It's in the back end. All of a sudden they're like, hey, you remember submitting for this? And you're like, not really, but here we are.
Yeah.
So I want
it.
everyone to know, you gotta have the patience, as you just said. It took you a year to find the lead actor.
And also sometimes it's almost better to, if you know someone that you love to work with, and you just, you know, they always blow things away. Sometimes you write a part for that person, and then that dialogue transfers into the writing process because it's like, you know how they talk, you know their vibe. That's also really fun. And I've actually worked Daniel DeWeldon, the guy that plays Gar.
Yes.
I've worked with him before, and that went into that. But I still made him audition because I also have a rule where I won't cast somebody unless they read, even if I write them the part. So that's that. And then also too, there was another character some years ago, maybe like 10, 12 years ago, there was another film I was possibly going to shoot in Ohio. It was kind of this like spooky in the woods, had some like Native American themes. And we were actually scouting, like, were there any Native American characters or real characters that could play themselves in the film? And I found out about this guy named Roger Moore, and he's the guy that ended up playing Hal when Eddie goes down to the cellar and there's all those little candles, and he's the Native American guy. So like 10 years later, just like you said, it ended up happening in a whole different context. We used the same person, and he was amazing. He kind of cracked everyone up because he was very straightforward. And you know, there's a line in there where he says his back is killing him, and it really was killing him. So I like that
Definitely.
moment.
So, you mentioned taking people you already know and kind of writing the role for them because you know how they talk. And I had this similar conversation with Russ, is that, he said that Eddie was supposed to have a stutter. It's like, how do you go from having like that much of a stutter to, hey, you know what, Daniel doesn't want that much stutter. But when you're writing something like that, as you mentioned again, if you know someone, you're writing based on them. How much do you take from their personal, being and then the character? How do you go about meshing them together?
I think with the stutter, some things like work really well on the page, and a stutter is like a good indication. Put an extra S on something, you're like, okay, you see, like, you hear it that they're like, there's something wrong with them, or they can't connect or reach out, but like in reality, when I saw it performed, it was too much, and it was like you could see that the effect I was trying to get. You could see that in other ways, just through like countenance and tone, and it came too much about the sound of the stutter, and then it was just like it was a little too heavy, so we scaled it back. And then there's still a few moments where he stutters throughout, but it almost sounds like he got over stuttering. There's a lot of people that we know well, like James Earl Jones, I think, who had a very strong stutter. And
I think with Eddie, it works, right? Because I feel like the stutter comes in when he's kind of like even more nervous than he usually is. And it kind of just plays into his character because you see his character and you're like, oh. So
yeah,
it was interesting to see his growth from like the first episode to, the last episode, I would say. Wouldn't you agree?
yeah, absolutely. And there was actually, I think that was one of the favorite things I liked and admired about Russ, was that he was really conscious about the change that happened in the character. So part of acting is, you kind of have to track where your character is in the story and remember to bring that in to that moment. So a lot of it's about reacting and creating authenticity and things like that. But then, especially if you're playing the lead, you got to remember about the kind of the arc, and he's very different at the end than the beginning. Now some of the other characters, like more supporting roles and things like that, it's a little less important, and you can kind of rely more on the writing, and the writing is what shows you what the structure is. But right now I'm watching, Game of Thrones, and I'm watching, I haven't seen it in years, but it's like the big, like Jon Snow at the beginning. He's like, man,
Yeah.
he's a bastard son, down and out, and you know where he's headed, right? He's
Yeah.
headed all the way to the top, and you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
damn, that's a good character arc right there.
Oh, for sure. And I think the perfect example out of Game of Thrones is Dany, Emilia Clarke, who plays Daenerys, right? You see her as like a timid, she
Yes.
kind of follows after her brother's lead, and then you see her towards the end as the mother of dragons, and the confidence from like, again, with her too, from season 1 to like season 8. It's the
Yeah.
journey of the actors, and it's incredible to see. I wanted to ask, what was your favorite moment when you were filming all this? Was there a favorite moment that you were like, this is hilarious, or a funny moment?
Man, there were just a lot of moments. I don't lately. I've just been thinking a lot about Roger Moore, the Native American character, and just the funny stuff that he would say. because he's just not in the film world at all. Like he goes out and he hunts like deer and elk and like, like
Right.
he's got photos of him, a giant fish, and just having that energy because we work in the film industry, and that's all we say the word industry like it's the only industry in the world is film.
Right.
But just working with people, and we had a lot of other people on the cast and crew that were, some of them were their first times, and they were like very, very amazing people. But it was also like fun to kind of see like, oh, the like shooting out of order is like sort of a form of thinking that you have to adapt. And so yeah, there's that. And then this guy Hugo, he's like one of my best friends, so I shouldn't call him this guy, but um he cracked all of us up, and he was kind of that like buffer. When there was like high stress, he was kind of like on his own wavelength, and like a lot of times we just found him sleeping on a couch. One time he got like locked in a house, and we were like all ready with all the lights to go home, and it's like midnight, and we're just like, "Where's Hugo?" And we couldn't leave, until we figured out where he was. And then he was upstairs, locked in the house, sleeping on a couch.
Oh my God, that's
You
funny.
know,
I feel
so
like you always need a person like that who kind of breaks the tension, especially when you have a show like this where it is like in the beginning, like I mean, throughout all 8 episodes, it is very tense. Like you don't know what's happening, you don't know what's about to happen. Someone else is getting a hold of the laptop. The Eddi has it. Eddi doesn't have it anymore. All of a sudden things are happening backwards. So I feel like having those serious scenes, you kind of, I feel like you always gotta have the comedian in the group that can break the tension.
Yeah, and it's like you have people that their job is like, oh, this person is in charge of the lights, or this person's a camera operator. But then even within those jobs, there's like a personal job that emerges, which is like the person's personality. And that can be like, oh, this is the fun person, or oh, this is the serious person that makes sure everything gets done. And they may not have anything to do with their actual job. That's just an extra bonus.
Yeah. So I'm noticing that you have a guitar in the background. Now, Russ did tell me a little snippet. He did tell me that you're great at playing the guitar and you write songs. Is that right? I want to know, would you ever do a movie with like, music in the background, since you do have the background for it?
Yeah, some of my like earlier film, like I did a 235 millimeter films. One was in 2000, came out in 2000, one came out in 2002. So the first one I composed all the music, and then I played guitar, piano, and drums on,
Wow.
and bass. And then I had like a studio recordist like mix it and record it correctly. And then that was a lot of fun. And then I did vocals on that too. And then the next one, I played guitar and then kind of like co-composed it. It kind of was like a Sling Blade sounding soundtrack, very like slow burn. That was a lot of fun. And then eventually, more got into just editing music, because like I'm not, I have my limited set of things I can do. And then at some point you hit like well, I'm not necessarily the best person to do this. And so I love like working with musicians and tracks and composers, and but I usually end up doing a lot of music editing, and sometimes you'll layer in like an extra string hold, or some percussion maybe that wasn't originally there. It can drive the composer crazy because you're like kind of messing with their literal track, but in the end, hopefully it sounds better.
Yeah. So we have a multi-talented person. So forget about the list I gave in the beginning. You're even adding out to, you're like, oh no, I don't do guitar, I do drum and piano. Okay, well, Russ didn't tell me that. He only told me about the guitar. So do you have any advice for maybe younger students or students who are in college taking drama or they want to get into it? How do you go about being a writer? What kind of advice would you give to someone who wants to start writing and directing?
I think the biggest piece of advice would be to like guard your creative spirit, because when you go to like school and colleges and anytime you take class anywhere, they want to get across the idea that you're getting your money's worth,
Mhm.
and that so they teach you these things that they're very like rule oriented and crystalline bullet point kind of things. But what can happen is you internalize them as musts, and then sometimes it takes years to unlearn things that you shouldn't really have learned in the first place. um so I think like any form of learning anything, like just learn enough to like where you're like you've learned, and then just let it go and then figure the rest out yourself.
Mhm.
Because if you take it 4 years of film and you learn every little thing, and you may never unlearn the things to get you to your true voice again. And I say that out of experience because the first script I wrote it on longhand on a pad of paper.
Mhm.
And it took me about a year or something, and I wrote it on my off time, and I used to run camera on this kind of small news station in my hometown. And on my off hours, while we're waiting for houses to catch on fire or whatever we're going to film, I would write.
Mhm.
I didn't know a thing about screenwriting. And then eventually, in a few years when I went out to LA and stuff, like people really took to that script. And a lot of people I've written and co-written a lot of scripts, like probably like 7 or 8 different scripts. And a lot of people say like that one is their favorite out of all of them. And I've gone to all kinds of classes and film schools and all this stuff. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like I didn't know what the hell I was doing,
All for what?
So yeah, so now it just makes you confused. And then, something happened to me over these years or like,
Yeah, I guess it's
um,
a learning experience, we would say, right? It's like kind
yeah,
of like as you go along, as you do more, you kind of gain the experience and you kind of become your own person to be like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to go about it.
yeah, absolutely. I think maybe like 10% of it could be learned, things like just guidelines like, oh yeah, facing conflict is good for a character, just little things like that. But you don't need much. Like you're a super creative person. Ideally you're a force, so why put a saddle on a stallion, like you're already there, just let it go.
And do you have any more upcoming projects that we could look out for?
Yes, not pardon me, not immediately. We're starting to look at a season 2, starting to shop it a little bit and try to get it picked up. So as you know, I don't want to give a spoiler, but it ends in a way that transitions to a season 2.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of excited about the ideas that we've put together for that. And then the other one, I have a sports film. It's a sports comedy,
Mhm.
and it's based on um, a basketball player that gets a second chance. And it has to do with like Michael Jordan and the
Oh,
explosion of the like early 90s and all these colors, and
wow.
it's just a really fun story that I think everybody could sink their teeth into and just love. So those are like the two main things right now. And then I also have like kind of my backlog of scripts that, if someone's interested in making, or if I don't necessarily have to direct them all or anything like that, but yeah.
It's definitely fascinating because I was just like 8 episodes. I'm like, that's it. Like, what's happening? Where is the rest? Like, especially as you said, for people who haven't watched it, you kind of got left off in a sense. You're like, I feel like there should be more. What's happening? But that's exciting that there might be a season 2 happening, and so everyone should look out for that. Daniel, I just want to thank you for taking your time. I appreciate it. Everyone, please go check out the TV series Chaser. It is now available on Tubi and Amazon Prime. And Daniel, thank you so much again for taking your time. I truly appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.